So I'm going to talk about UK overseas territories and the collections here at the National Maritime Museum and try and weave together some connections between the territories and how they relate to the big themes that we cover here at the museum. So what I'm really looking at are small territories and big seas, and small territories and big histories here at the museum, and try and work out what a post-Brexit future will mean for the past that we tell here. So that's my particular focus. Okay, now you'll be familiar with a map like this, and in preparing this talk I thought, well, I'd better find out what we actually do have that relates to UK overseas territories. So I did a very boring exercise and plotted it out. Now, in some cases, particularly the Turks and Caicos Islands, it was immensely disappointing in that when you put Turks and Caicos into the museum's database, it comes up with only one hit. If you put Turks and then Caicos in, you actually get 10 hits, so that was slightly better. As you can see, because we are a maritime museum but with a naval bias, then Gibraltar bulks pretty large. So Gibraltar is the winner of our little competition. And then I thought, well, shall we map this against populations as well, just to see, who gets the most hits per population. And of course, bizarrely, it's Pitcairn, largely because it's only got a population in the mid-40s. They have 2.5 objects per person on Pitcairn, whereas of course poor old Cayman Islands can only grub up 1 object per 4,071 people. Well, that's of course because there are far too many people in the Cayman Islands, of course, rather than far too few objects here. Now, as I began to investigate, of course, this exercise is absolutely meaningless. Okay? Totally and utterly meaningless. Because there is a naval officer who's represented in the manuscripts collection whose name is Pitcairn Jones. You see, and he has utterly nothing to do with the Pitcairn Islands, so that confused things. So I went through the 7 objects related to Anguilla in the collection just to see what would come up. And you get a battle that's near the island, but not actually on the island, and therefore only partially connected. You get the ship named after the island, helpful, but not actually about the island. And then you find something under Tortola, which actually includes the island, but doesn't come up when you search under that term. So my hope of actually finding a stream of collections that would relate seamlessly into a talk collapsed completely. So what on earth am I actually going to say to you? And I can tell you I'm now making it up because the collection wasn't going to help. Now, there is no one here from St. Helena. Is that right? How marvellous. Right. So we can, that's marvellous. So we can be very nasty, or at least explore St. Helena as a little case study. So I've called this small territories in big seas. And the red blob is nowhere near the size of St. Helena. St. Helena is a territory of about 47 square miles. Okay? Now that may be vast in terms of which territory you come from, but you have to realise that that 47 square miles sits in the middle of the 41 million square miles of the Atlantic Ocean. Okay? Now, that brings things into a very, very sharp perspective. St Helena is, I'm not being nasty about St Helena, but St Helena is a pinprick in the Atlantic. It is absolutely minute, but has an extremely important historical role. Here is St Helena in what we might describe as its historical heyday, and St Helena is, as you can see, busy. It's busy because it is run by the East India Company and is a mid-Atlantic refreshment point for ships of the East India Company. So St Helena is a vital connecting point between India and Britain. And the reason it's vital is that St Helena has fresh water and a decent climate. So when a ship is sailing back from India laden with cotton cloth, indigo, tea, St Helena is a refreshment station. And you can see that by this. You see this sort of rather tightening here. This, by the way, is the line of ships going out. Ships going out don't need St Helena because they've been supplied from Britain. Ships going back do need St Helena because by that point they're running out of water, and there may be few fresh supplies. So if you miss St Helena on your way back, you run the risk of running out of water and your crew getting scurvy. Now, think about it. 47 square miles in 41 million square miles of ocean. How on earth do you find St Helena? I'm not actually sure I have the answer to that. It is something of a skill. If you stand in the crow's nest of an East Indiaman and look out, you see for about 20 miles. Well, that's of no use whatsoever in finding St Helena. And remember, that's 20 miles of you doing this, wobbling back and forth trying to find it. So St Helena, this tiny, tiny, tiny pinprick, is important to find. It becomes absolutely vital to Britain's trade with the East. It's of no strategic value for anything else. That is its sole purpose. But we can, of course, put the small territory of St Helena into a bigger history. Big histories always involve small men, and our small man here, of course, is Napoleon. Here he is captured after the Battle of Waterloo. Here he is on the Bellerophon, and his destiny, of course, is to spend the rest of his life on St Helena. The tiny size of St Helena and the fact that it sits in 41 million square miles of ocean means that it is ideal as a prison for the French emperor, the monster Napoleon. So, you can't see him, but that's Napoleon there. This is him at Plymouth waiting to go out to St Helena. There he is, looking particularly happy. And he stays at Longwood House. And of course the great irony for Napoleon is that while he can be emperor of St Helena, or at least emperor of the Longwood estate on St Helena, so we're already moving down from 47 square miles to the few acres of the Longwood estate, still set in the 41 million square miles of the Atlantic Ocean, he is surrounded by the element that he was unable to conquer. Napoleon, of course, was astride the entire continent of Europe, the great military and strategic master of his day, but he was unable to conquer the seas and the Royal Navy, and now, of course, the sea has become his prisoner. So we can see the sea as being a great connective tissue with the story of St. Helena and the East India Company, but the sea as an impenetrable barrier as far as Napoleon is concerned. Of course, in order to keep hold of St. Helena, Britain decided that Tristan da Cunha would be useful as a further garrison. I'm not sure who thought of that idea, given it is hundreds of miles away, but so you have further strategic developments in the Atlantic. Now, we could just leave St. Helena there, prison for Napoleon and way station for the East India Company. Surely that is enough for 47 square miles of island in the mid-Atlantic. Now, what we see here is, this is the 1840s, and we have got essentially a tsunami hitting St. Helena. There has been some ruction in the mid-Atlantic ridge, as there often is, and a wave is crashing against the steep shores of St. Helena, wrecking many ships. But these are not ships of the East India Company. These are captured slave ships at St. Helena. Why are they at St. Helena? Well, if you are the Royal Navy patrolling the west coast of Africa and you intercept ships sailing from West Africa to the Americas, as Britain is after 1807, intercepting the ships of other nations, where will you go with your captured cargo of freed Africans? Well, the answer is that you go to St. Helena, because the climate is good, there is water there, and the Africans, in bad condition, will be able to rest before they are then taken back to Africa and probably released at Sierra Leone to Freetown. So St. Helena, using the same basis as its East India Company history, becomes useful in anti-slavery. So you are able then to take this tiny island in the middle of the Atlantic and fit it into a major transatlantic story connecting West Africa and the Americas, the history of anti-slavery. Now, this map, whether you like it or not, is going to feature more strongly in our post-Brexit world. I was speaking to colleagues at the British Museum, and they are becoming interested in what they are calling the long 19th century, 1750 to 1950, essentially a moment of global engagement for Britain, and of course in that period global engagement meant engagement through the British Empire. So here it is at its bloated height in 1921. How Britain engaged with the world commercially, socially, politically, etc., will be re-examined as we look into our post-Brexit world, with Britain having to look out again without the lens of the European Union. So expect a lot of what I'm calling Brempire to feature in coming conversations. Now, this is an interesting moment to be doing it, because this may be a time where we can finally have a frank discussion about Brempire and what it actually meant. There was a piece in The Guardian earlier this week which looked at the denial that Britain has about its relationship with India, how extraordinarily rapacious the British were in India taking money out, whereas all we really talk about is how, of course, we gave India law, railways, and the hugely important institution of cricket. Now, that's fine. We did all of those things, but that's not a very equal balance sheet of empire. So let's see where we get to, but I think Brexit and Brempire will be closely connected. Now, just briefly to conclude, the museum has a master narrative for this site, which tries to bring sense and cohesion to what could be an enormous baggy jumper of a subject, Britain and the sea. So, migration, trade, the Navy, exploration, technology, environment and leisure are the 7 major thematic trends that we explore in the museum. Now, we don't have a trade gallery, a leisure gallery. We weave these stories through historical narratives to try and make sense of Britain's past. So, thinking of our long 19th century, our 1750 to 1950, our post-Brexit Brempire story, and I managed to get Bermuda in by accident. Good. We need to think about our New World Rivieras, but we need to think about them in new and different ways. It's very easy to do leisure as a first-class passenger experience. And of course, most of the surviving evidence for leisure is a first-class passenger experience because it's the sort of things that people have kept. But what about our Brempire cruise? What about our Lascar seamen servicing a first-class experience? These are the stories that we will increasingly need to weave in. We're already doing it, but are we doing it enough? Sarah says no. She's shaking her head. No, no, no. Trade. We will need to focus back on this. This is a snapshot from 1937, and each blob is a ship of a certain size, British ships dashing about hither and thither. We will need to think about trade, think about those connections. In other words, we need to use the historical connections to explain what Britain is about to do, the new connections she is going to have to make. We need to think very carefully, as we are at the moment, about the histories of exploration. Here we see 2 encounters of Captain Cook in the Pacific. Very different. And we've got to get both of those stories represented carefully in order to give a balanced and coherent view of exploration. What does a post-Brexit Nelson look like? I have absolutely no idea. But how do we reinterpret old stories, stories that have been told here for 100+ years, how do we reinterpret those for a different audience in different political circumstances? Does Nelson always have to simply be the hero of Trafalgar, or would it be interesting to look much more at his Caribbean career? After all, he made the great mistake in the Caribbean of believing that every plantation owner's daughter was rich, so he married one. Do we need to explore those histories more? Or are we happy with Nelson just being Mr. Trafalgar? I will stop there.